All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Fatima. It's great to meet all of you guys. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about learning from an entrepreneurial journey as a two-time startup founder and a woman in STEM. And this is not only a presentation that shows a little bit of my advice and the things that I learned over the years, but also some other people's advice that I've learned from others who have, been in the field longer than me, who have done a plethora of different things. It's kind of all accumulated into one presentation. So I hope you guys will find some benefit to this presentation today. All right, I'd just like to start off with a brief background of mine. So again, I'm Fatimah Hussain. I'm a 16-year-old high schooler based in the Bay Area. And here are just a few of the things that I've done. As you can see, there's a huge variety. I'm the founder of two startups, Blue Wings Technologies LLC, which is an app dev based startup, and Unicorn Log, which is a CAD 3D printing consumer products based startup. And I also really enjoy public speaking. I like speaking about women in STEM, mentality, iOS dev, CAD, a lot of things. I've spoken for like Code with Classy, other hackathons, podcasts, and I'm also a TEDx speaker. I really do a lot generally about like iOS. This is iOS, web development, women in STEM empowerment. This was about bridging the gender gap. And then this was all like both Instagram takeovers is how I kind of like a day-to-day life. And then I do a lot about, finding startups and then mentality and mindset, and also having a good work-life balance, especially as a high schooler where you're, juggling like AP classes and you sports and other clubs that you're participating in. And how I also kind of my experience joining like mainly male-dominated STEM fields such as robotics and high school, and kind of, made the most out of the experience and, gained the leadership position to empower women in STEM. So here are just a few examples. This is from my robotics team. That's from another volunteering thing. So yeah, I've done a lot, and I'm really excited to kind of explain or describe, what I've learned in the past, having done so much stuff. So first, I'd like to start off with some advice for starters. Maybe if you're just starting off in the field of STEM, or maybe you have some interests, you have some passions, but you're not really sure how to take it a step further, right? And this is just generally, it's tailored to everyone. Number one would be to really just try everything. And even if you feel like you won't enjoy doing it, just give it a try. Like, there's nothing bad that can happen. Learn to explore different interests, even if it's things that you probably won't find yourself doing or something you're not particularly fond of. Just try it out. Maybe if you want to try it with a friend, there's a lot of leeway into trying everything. And once you start trying everything, you're able to narrow it down to the things that you're like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, I want to learn more about this. So you can kind of deep dive. And then you can also, maybe go backwards. Like maybe you already have something in place, but you're like, maybe I don't really enjoy this as much as I thought I would. Then you can go back and, explore another interest that you did in the past, or explore something totally different. Like, for instance, I'll give my example. Like, I took a physics class in high school, and I was like, I really don't like physics. Like, I'm not going to enjoy this class at all. But then I really ended up enjoying it, right? So it's something that I saw like kind of like that's something I would see myself doing at the very last. I ended up genuinely enjoying that. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have had the same or a similar experience in the past. Number two would be to have a strong online presence that represents the authentic you. So this can be from a LinkedIn, this can be on Instagram, Facebook, even having a personal website, I would say, displaying your interest or your projects, having a GitHub, etc. Just all those semi like famous platforms. People can reach out to you, they can look at your stuff, you can make valuable connections from there. And especially when you start reaching out, for instance, if you're cold messaging on LinkedIn and they see that message and they're able to just navigate to your LinkedIn to see kind of your credibility, your work experience, your project experience. And recruiters are also able to reach out to you. So LinkedIn was actually like the how I landed my first like remote tech job for iOS development. So it's a great way for other people to reach out to you and for you to reach out to other people. And moving on we have meeting people with similar interests. So it kind of ties in with number 4. So I'll just kind of put those two together. But a way to meet people, who have similar interests as you is participating in events, hackathons like EcoHacks. This is, a great way to meet other people, even people with different interests, Also tying in with number 1, going into other webinars, like global webinars, like maybe there's a bunch of fundraising webinars out there. You can attend online, in person. I know there's some, in person in the Bay Area, maybe in your region as well. You can participating in events, especially volunteering events, because, you don't have to pay for those. Or if you do, it comes at a really cheap cost, and you're able to not only make connections, but you're also able to meet people with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different races, just a lot of diversity out there, and you're able to kind of learn from all those experiences. And especially if those people have been in that field for so long, they're able to give you advice, and they're able to say, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn, and then, take that connection a step further, be like, reach out, say, hey, is your company offering any internships, job opportunities? I'd love to send over my resume, just kind of a short, sweet message. And I find that really effective against just doing that formal application that you see on when you do job searches for companies, because I feel like you're more likely to get an internship or a job. And I've seen it work at a much higher success rate for other people as well, when you have a connection kind of, putting in a good word for you, rather than you kind of doing it yourself. So connections are definitely a huge part of not only internships, job opportunities, but genuinely just meeting other people it's a really good return on investment. And you shouldn't expect, again, you shouldn't expect things out of people. You should do it just genuinely meeting people and learning more about them. All right. And number 2 would be involvement. So these are all kind of tied in together, you'll notice, but I would say there's 2 main types of involvements. So one is community. And involvement in communities can mean many things, right? The first thing that probably comes to your mind is volunteering or doing some service for service clubs. And that's a great way of being involved in your community and meeting others and learning more about your local communities, right? And it's also a great way actually to get future letter of recs, especially if you're significantly involved in a volunteering organization, or even if you have a leadership role that can, kind of expand more on that, or have taken a part for that nonprofit or any other sort of organization for a long time and have done exceptionally well. But there's also different examples of community involvement, as well as in addition to volunteering. And that's even taking classes in, high school or college that interest you, such as I'm taking ceramics because it looked really cool. I'm taking a VR class at community college. And if they're not available at your school, find other resources such as, dual enrollment or online classes or boot camps that will help fuel your passion. So this is a type of, I would say, community involvement. I think it's a really big scope. And service clubs is what people generally focus on, but there's like this other like 70-80% that people just forget. And that's, things that you can do, other things that you can do to be involved in the community. And, taking college classes is a way to get involved in the community. Taking high school classes is how you are involved in the community, because you're meeting other people, you're meeting teachers, you're meeting professors, you're meeting people who have had years or maybe decades of experience in that field that you're interested in. And you're also able to make connections from those connections, right? You can find mutuals, and then you're also able to connect with them on other online platforms such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, right? And just what I have learned over the past is not to wait for an opportunity to come to you, and you got to really hustle for it, especially if it's something you're really passionate about. If the person on the other end sees that you're continuously being persistent and you really are showing your excitement for it, and you're actively finding which resources will help you ultimately reach your end goal, all those failures does make the one success really worth it. A lot of people have said that. I said that a lot of people have been through, multiple failures. And then that one success is like, yes, I finally got it, right? And you also learn a lot from those failures. As long as you're taking, as long as you're learning from your mistakes and, taking valuable lessons, kind of like doing a reflection of, maybe why I didn't get this job opportunity. Was my resume, too fluffed? Did it have necessary details? Then was I not confident during the job interview, right? You can always improve. Even if you do get a job offer, you can always improve on that. And now I'm moving on to an online involvement. So another great example, I would say, even ties into community involvement, but this is more at a larger scope since it is online, or anybody can just join from any region. It would be being a part of online groups, or maybe in-person groups as well, that relate to your passions and interests, such as, Discord groups. Like for example, there is a company called Thingiverse that is utilized for people. They have groups for people who are interested in CAD, 3D printing, right? So I'm a part of many of those. And also many YouTubers, influencers have their own like Discord groups or other sort of group chats that people can partake in at no cost usually. And from there, they're able to meet like-minded people, and as well as many online courses like Udemy, Coursera, other YouTube courses even. They have Discord groups where you can ask questions, share projects, and there's also a lot of recruiters on there. So that's a great way, especially if you're active in that server, right? People, especially recruiters, are able to see this person has done a lot, and maybe I'll reach out to them, or you can reach out to them and show them the project that you've created. And the one thing I would say that high schoolers, especially high schoolers, start early, start leveraging this resource really early on, would be LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, if you're not familiar with what it is, or if you know a little bit but not too much, is basically a platform similar to Instagram or Facebook. It's a social media sort of platform, but it's specifically tailored to kind of showing your projects, kind of like a little kind of similar to a resume, but you're able to reach out to people with a resume and they can just directly click on your LinkedIn instead of sending a PDF of your resume. And it's really nicely laid out. LinkedIn is a great resource. Number one, I've gotten most of my opportunities from LinkedIn. I know a lot of people have done the same from LinkedIn. When I talk to them, or when I have a virtual coffee chat, I'm like, where did you get this opportunity? They're like, from LinkedIn. One of my connections that I made at a event, whatever, they sent me this LinkedIn post, sent me this LinkedIn company, and I reached out to them, they were able to connect me, blah, blah, blah. And so LinkedIn is a great way of doing this, because on LinkedIn, you're able to have posts that show kind of what you like to do or the project that you've created. So right here, as you can see, this was when a nonprofit wrote an article about me, about, how I founded 2 startups. And I just kind of post that on my LinkedIn, right? And you kind of gain a lot of exposure that way. And on LinkedIn, like even people who you're not following or who don't follow you back, they're also able to see it on that feed. So you get much more exposure that way. You can use hashtags, get the necessary exposure that relate to your post. This one was, at a Stanford event, like I won 2nd place for a healthcare hackathon. So I posted that, right? And a lot of people also kind of message on your LinkedIn like, hey, I'd love to connect. I'd love to learn more about this. And, you can just meet them that way as well. And third one was like another sort of Instagram takeover for another hackathon. So there's a lot of things that you can use on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn also has a section called jobs, and LinkedIn's algorithm, I would say, is like phenomenally good. Like all the jobs that I've seen, all the internships that I've seen, most of them at least, a lot of them relate to what I'm doing and something that I actually be interested in applying for. But then again, right, you're also able to see like the employees. So that's really good. So you can just reach out to the employees in that field, especially the recruiters. You can say like, hey, I'd love to do this, especially if you're a high schooler, right? They have all those prerequisites. Like you must have a bachelor's, you must blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of opportunities that I know a lot of high schoolers have gotten that were meant to be from college students. But honestly, as long as you have the experience, as long as you have the passion, as long as you're open-minded, people will, accept your job offer, as long as you're open to learning, because that's what they're mainly looking for in young students, especially high schoolers, right? As long as you really genuinely want to learn from others, because especially when you're being recruited from those high tech companies that mainly have, people already graduated from college, they would often have more experience than you, having done already a bachelor's, a master's, etc. So it's really important for you to be open-minded generally, in general as well, especially when you go to events, you'll meet a lot of people that, have done great things. You want to be open-minded, just as a general, not even on LinkedIn. All right, so now I'd like to talk about how I actually found my 2 startups and how I actually used all the stuff that I talked about in the previous slides to actually help me get to this point. So number 1, I founded Blue Wings Technologies LLC first, and these were all founded during the pandemic when I had literally nothing to do, and I'm sure a lot of people felt the same. And I was able to explore a lot of passions that I didn't realize I had pre-pandemic. Even in my free time right now, I always continuously build on these startups. So I want to note that while this is great, the learning never stops. So I am planning on learning React so I can take my app like cross-platform and hopefully available on Android stores as well. So that's just one example. So I like to first talk about Blue Wings Technologies LLC. So this actually started off, I want to mention that for these 2, I had no kind of timeline to actually make this into a startup. It was just something that I solely thought about, just something to spend time on during the pandemic, where a lot of us had a lot of time and, weren't sure what to do with all that time. And so I just self-taught myself via YouTube courses. So there's this one really great guy called Sean Allen. I highly recommend anyone who's interested in iOS development to watch that guy. Absolutely amazing. But anyways, I also followed some app tutorials. I found those to be the most useful rather than, like if else statements, how to use components, etc. I found actually building an app that I was able to follow through from, a few hours long explanation on YouTube. I was able to actually create my own app from all the things that I learned to do that. So I would say that's actually another thing. You'll actually find different ways of accomplishing different tasks, different ways that people do it. It just depends on how you learn, how you retain information, and how you use that to make a new project. And then from there, I registered my LLC as an entertainment sort of game app company as an LLC corporations, thus the birth of Blue Wings Technologies LLC. And then from there, I eventually launched Blackjack Pot Cards on iOS Apple Store, which is simply a simplistic sort of blackjack game. You can download it. Really fun, not biased review at all. All right, number 2 would be Unicorn Lock. So I'm not going to be biased, but I definitely enjoy doing more things related to Unicorn Lock in comparison to Blue Wings Technologies LLC, but I definitely really enjoy doing both. And this was also self-taught via just one Udemy course that I got like in the beginning of the pandemic. And I was like, this looks crazy. I don't think this is achievable, but I'm going to do it. And YouTube, but mainly that one Udemy course. And then from there, I did a few CAD projects on my own. I did custom designs, and note that for both app development and CAD, I had no prior experience, right? I didn't take any sort of college class or high school class, although that would have been a really good idea, but it's pandemic. I had no sort of experience. I hadn't, I've met like a few people remotely in that field, but never really gained a valuable connection where I could learn more about that. But then I started to, once I became more involved with these 2 things. And so I think what's important is that you don't really want to do it just so you have like the bragging rights, you have that one headline that really makes your thing pop, although that is a bonus point, right? You want to do it because you genuinely are passionate about it. And the only way that you will actually learn that you're passionate about something is by trying everything, right? You can't just try 2 things and be like, oh my God, I love this. But then you find, once you're like really involved with it and then you find something else, you're like, oh my God, wait, this is so much better. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, but at the same time, you're sort of also wasting time, but then you're also learning things. So it just depends on yourself, I would say personally. But what I felt, and I feel like a lot of people would say the same, is just try everything because, I feel like most of you guys are high schoolers, so you have a lot of time to find your passion. People even go to college having an undecided major. So There's totally nothing wrong with that. You know, people are still exploring. There's no age limit. There's no minimum max age limit for you to have a passion set in place. You can find that at any point in your life. Yeah. And then for unicorn lock, I found a problem that I could solve with 3D printing, which was actually that I have a younger brother and he's always messing with my stuff, always opening my cabinets. I was like, I should create a lock that locks my cabinets such that he is unable to access them and only I am able to access them. So I created a lock, which I called unicorn lock. I just called that for fun. And I was like, oh my God, wait, I could actually create this through a company. I could actually sell these to daycares, to families, to parents, to pets. They could even use it on pets, honestly. And then from there, I actually bought a 3D printer. I bought the Ender 3 Pro and then I printed away. So again, there's a lot of learning curves. So all this is a very simplistic version. You might be thinking, oh my God, this is so easy to do. But there was a lot of obstacles along the way that I did not mention here because I wanted to keep it short and sweet. But I think generically there are many obstacles, and anything that you do, there are going to be obstacles. That's how you know that the end result is going to be worth it. And that's how you know that what you're doing is something you're actually capable of, right? If there's nothing that, you know, you're confused on, there's nothing you're stuck on, then it's boring, to be honest, right? If you have nothing that you can do additional research on, nothing you can reach out to other people on, it just gets kind of boring and you're like, okay, this is kind of pretty easy. All right. So those are the two things that I am mainly involved in. And then, yeah, moving on. So now I'd like to talk about women in STEM, right? I am a woman in STEM, evidently. I wanted to have a large portion of this talk related and tailored for women in STEM empowerment, and not only women in STEM, but also other minorities, such as LGBTQ plus. But as a woman in STEM, I feel like I could talk about that more. Okay, so as you can see in this sort of mini chart, it's definitely improving, right? But for some occupation, it is improving incredibly slowly, especially for STEM occupations. And I'm going to say this graph is most likely for women 20 and above. And the main cause, I would say, for some of these lines, such as the engineering one, is most likely due to the afflictions that women experience during high school and teenage years, right? Because whatever stereotypes that are formed in your head while your brain is developing, right? Because that's what any of us go through, right? And when we're teenagers, right? Our brain is still developing, or we're still formulating opinions of ourselves, so on and so forth. And once you have like those opinions from, it's hard for anyone generically to move out of that scope and be like, oh my God, I can do this too. Like there's no cookie cutter person that is able to accomplish this, right? And so one thing I like to note is there isn't a disparity for women in STEM because women aren't interested in STEM. It's due to the ever so prominent low self-esteem issues that arise from societal expectations of women that mesh their belief that, you know, they're not the cookie cutter expectation for someone involved in STEM. Like I'm gonna give you an example, like it's happening even right now. I saw a post on LinkedIn and I even saw it myself, the job that said when they were listing out their prerequisites, they were using he for all of them. And I was like, come on, man, like this is 2022 and you're using he must have a bachelor's degree in math or whatever. He must have at least 5 years of experience in iOS 11. Like I thought that was really shocking and really upsetting how people are still doing that. And for you to be like so ignorant, I think is kind of tells a lot about that company as well, but also tells about our society, even in 2022. And when we only see, especially in high schoolers and in high school, and I've seen this in myself too, I've seen it in high school, I've moved around a lot, and I've always seen that sort of same kind of trend in all of those schools, and other people have as well, I'm sure you've seen it too, is that when we only see males, right, holding leadership positions in STEM, it's human nature for you to believe that you need to fit that standard in order to be successful. You need to be a male, or otherwise, you know, go do something else. Like this is not right for you, which is strictly not the case at all. And don't get me wrong, this has significantly improved over 1970, which is when this graph started. But you can see that the increase is kind of upsetting, and should be a much higher exponential increase. All right, and this is why it's so important to promote women empowerment and gender minority involvement, especially at a young age. And it's so important to start locally. And you don't even have to be a woman or part of a minority group to promote women empowerment, right? You can be anyone. Anyone can empower somebody else, right? There's no like, again, there's no cookie cutter, like you have to be this person in order to empower this person, etc. Anybody can do that. And it's really great seeing everyone involved, you know, and getting everyone included, and, you know, being inclusive of other people. And, you know, even though this graph is towards women, you know, this is definitely applicable to other gender minorities such as LGBTQ. So you might be wondering, okay, well, I know this, you know, I know most of this, but how can I actually start empowering women? How can I actually do my part in my local communities to do so? So, before I start actually this, I would also like to mention in the first section, when I did the brief background in my robotics club, I'm one of the leaders. I have the high leadership position in my robotics club, such that I work directly with the novice kids, which basically means like the kids who are just entering the novice club, right? And before that, you know, I've seen, you know, mainly males, you know, kind of applying for robotics club, but that, you know, has significantly changed over time. And so I realized, you know, if you have a leadership position as a woman, or even as anyone generally, but especially as a woman, if you have that sort of leadership position, that will make other women more inclined to join that club. And I would definitely, like, when I signed up for like STEM-based clubs, you know, there wasn't a lot of women holding leadership positions. And, you know, that kind of brought my self-esteem down a bit. It was like, you know, it doesn't seem like, you know, women are holding the positions that I hope to achieve at some point. So this is kind of upsetting, right? So I kind of use that as motivation to push myself to, you know, sign up for a director of education, someone who's heavily involved with the club. And from there, you know, when I hung flyers, you know, I did the announcement stuff, I really made sure to have, like, you know, women on the flyer as well, so people are able to see that women can do this as well, right? It's a little thing, you know, having a thing that says open to everyone, you know, everyone can join, anyone of all ages, races, blah blah blah. These small things really do impact, you know, the results of having more women involved in not only STEM clubs, but STEM in general, significantly. All right, so that kind of ties into number one. So inclusivity is vital. And I know most clubs out there, you know, y'all are inclusive, but you need to state that in your flyer or whatever sort of marketing advertisement that you're doing, right? People want to know, people want to see, you know, like, words are great, but people also want to see, how are you being inclusive? So when I had my flyers hung up for robotics, right, I made sure to have a photo of us like winning some sort of robotics competition that had, you know, half of us were women. I made sure to have that hung up on, made sure to have that photo on the flyer, right? So it's genuinely, realistically, the little things that really matter that people notice. And there's also other ways of doing this. Like, I'll give another example that I saw someone else do. You know, generally just even reaching out to not even the principal, but just people who handle in your school, for instance, in your school district, people who handle all that marketing stuff, kind of perhaps run by your flyers through them, or you can even ask them, like, you know, what are some ways that I can empower women in STEM, because maybe across districts is different. They have sort of different rules, you know, it kind of just depends on that. And even honestly, just having an announcement on your school saying, you know, this is open to everyone, women in STEM, LGBT, even listing it out, I would say definitely is really impactful. And especially if you are a woman in a male-dominated STEM field, it's so important. Word of mouth, I would say, is the most important thing and the most underutilized resource of all time, especially in women empowerment, is kind of saying like, hey, you know, whatever your friend's name is, we have a robotics club, and the applications are open. You know, I know that you really enjoy doing robotics, bioengineering, whatever, and I was wondering if, you wanted to participate, or, if you have any other friends, here's a flyer, please tell them about this, about the robotics club. Like, I'm really trying to get more women involved, you know what I mean? And so, they'll kind of get you, give them a flyer, they'll get other people. And so word of mouth, expands a lot from there. And that's how we were able to get a lot of female applicants. I would say word of mouth was definitely one of the bigger aspects of it. And number 2 is join local women in STEM clubs. If you're LGBTQ plus, join local LGBTQ plus clubs, right? It just kind of depends, like whatever minority that you're part of, join that club, meet other people who are also similar to you in that regard. Have connections in that group that you have created. It's so important for us to meet as a woman in STEM. It's so important. I would say it was helped significantly when I met other women in STEM who have done such great things, and not only do you have to do local women in STEM clubs, although that's a great place for you to start, but once you have, that LinkedIn, the online presence, you can start reaching out to other women in STEM who have done so much. You're able to learn from them, and most of them are happy to have a coffee chat with you, if you just message them and, have a good LinkedIn profile. So I would say that is definitely really, really important. One of the most important things I would say is being involved in this is being involved in your communities, right? This ties into my earlier points. As you can see, these are all kind of pieces to a puzzle that I'm kind of forming right now. Is these all kind of tie into each other, and being a part of those local women in STEM clubs is not only community involvement, but you're also learning from other people's experiences, learning from other people's situations, kind of coming together to solve the problem of gender disparity, gender gap, right? It all starts locally. You start expanding. If you don't have a local women in STEM club, then just create one. There's nothing wrong with creating your own club that relates specifically to women in STEM. I had a girls who code club in middle school, right? I was able to teach a few women like how to code. A lot of them didn't have any background in coding experience. So I was able to teach them, right? It just starts locally. You can change the lives of one person. I'm happy with that. I'm sure a lot of people would say the same as well. As long as you are able to push women into the field of STEM who are genuinely interested in it, maybe that have that low self-esteem. I'm a lot of people are really satisfied with that. And I'm really happy to see, women involvement in those STEM related fields. And honestly, if you see clubs and number 3, never be afraid to use your voice, right? If you see clubs or groups that are maybe not being inclusive, you see you'll sort of get that vibe who are specifically disregarding a specific group or are being disrespectful, report them. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And I feel like there's a very this might be very stigmatized, like, oh my God, you can't report them. Like, maybe they just, I don't know, but there's no shame in using your voice. And although the stigmatism regarding our females' work ethic in comparison to males is really negatively stigmatized, right? That shouldn't be stopping you. You shouldn't be listening to what other people say, because what their opinion is of you should not change what your opinion is of yourself, right? I think now in the future, as you kind of go by, you'll learn that it's all mental. It's all in the head. It's mainly of you kind of forming that mindset, like, hey, these people's opinions, what do they matter to me? They don't even matter to me. Why should their opinions matter? Why should their opinions of me matter to me? Right? So this is also kind of a sort of mentality type of thing, and you kind of, start learning that. And especially if you're starting young, especially if you're starting in high school, right? Once you actually start going in jobs and you see mainly male dominant fields, you're able to more comfortably use your voice from all those experiences that you had in high school, middle school, etc. All right. And one important tip I would say, just to kind of wrap everything up, is to do the activities that you enjoy, even if they don't fluff up your resume. These will help you in some way. I'm telling you, these will help positively reinforce your brain in some sort of way, such as training your brain mentally, training yourself physically. It could be working out, etc. It will positively help you, because if you enjoy doing something and it's something good, right? If you enjoy doing something, it's something that's positively fueling your body, fueling your mindset, then you should continue doing that. You shouldn't have to stop. You shouldn't need to stop doing that just because you're like, oh my God, wait, this is not helping me get a job search, right? Or this is not like, how can I use this in my resume? That is not the goal of, even generally in whatever passions you do, the goal is not for you to fluff up your resume. The goal is not for you to get into your dream college from that passion. The goal is for you to, whatever your passion is, but I feel like most of us, right? The goal of us is to help other people in any sort of way, such as, helping people reach their goals, helping people in the field of healthcare, CAD, 3D printing, etc. Help people create more like forms of entertainment. It could really be anything, right? As long as you're helping people in a positive manner, that's all that matters. And even helping yourself, right? You're a person too. If it's just helping you, then so be it. That's amazing. That's good that you are helping yourself. And then once you train your brain, you train your body mentally, working out. That's just one example. Hiking, outdoor activity. That's just one example, right? You're training not only your body, but you're also training your brain mentally, right? So I'll give you an example. So I did Krav Maga for a few months, and that actually taught during the summer, and that taught me how to train the brain mentally. And it helped me push myself out of my self-constrained limits. And I ended up actually, I ended up using, maybe I didn't realize I was using it, right? And maybe you had the same experience as well, where you unconsciously, right, use something that you learned from a previous experience into a current experience. I would say unconsciously, I did use those Krav Maga skills. Not that it's for like punching people, right? That's not what I use, but I use the fact that, to always push myself, into believing that I can do it. And especially those were, I think, heavily utilized for my creations of my 2 startups. And I was like, oh my God, what, this is not going my way at all. Like, none of this is going in the direction that I want it to go in. Well, what am I doing, right? Why am I here in the first place? I'm like, Fatimah, there's a reason why you're here. You genuinely like doing this. Even backtracking, I would say there's nothing bad about that at all. And so you learn to, once you start doing things that positively reinforce your brain, you will see that whatever you're doing, you will just genuinely enjoy doing that more. And you will just see that you just feel more overall happy and content with your life. You'll be more grateful. There's a lot of positive aspects that I've not probably mentioned that you can do your own research on. I'll give you another example. Similarly, Steve Jobs took a class for calligraphy, I think in college, not sure where, and then he took that class without the intention of utilizing it in the development of Apple. And his calligraphy knowledge, he just joined that class because he was like, oh my God, this is so cool how you can write words in different fonts, different looking ways. I want to learn this, right? He had no plan to use that in the development of Apple. And that's what makes products like that so beautiful, right? You just had all the experience that you learned in the past with no intent of you creating into a startup or a business, and you just use those resources to do so. And so his calligraphy knowledge nurtured the creation of the different Apple fonts in the early stages as well as the late stages, right? And arguably that's what set Apple apart, different from Microsoft and other companies in the early stages, that they were able to adapt, they were able to continuously learn and continuously iterate upon their own product, right? And you can use that analogy for yourself, right? As long as you're continuously learning, you can continuously reiterate on your knowledge. Your opinions are changing, they're becoming better, right? And so as long as you're continuously learning, as long as you're doing the things that you love, more likely than not, you'll end up getting valuable learning experiences from whatever you're doing, right? And it's not necessary that an activity that you're doing outside of academic should complement your academic or work life. You could be like doing a STEM field, but having a baking side hustling job. That's a great thing to have. That's even what other it's incredibly important for, I would say, in the eyes of other companies, if you really want to look in that regard, right? To have not only a diverse set of passions, which shows that you're open-minded and you enjoy partaking activities of different categories that strengthens different parts of your brain, but it's more important to be having fun while doing things you love. As mentioned previously, and this is ultimately, I would say, what fuels the desire for more in future startup founders, investors, and people with an incredibly positive reputation overall that are trying to make the most out of their lives and you can't make a difference in other people's lives without making a difference in your own life, I would say. And yeah, I mean, that's the end. Feel free to connect with me through these following social medias, my LinkedIn, here it is, my Instagram, there it is, my YouTube. I have a maths channel, 2 Min Maths, follow that. Personal website, there it is. I think these slides will also be sent out, so you guys are able to just click on those links, DM me. I would love to chat with any of y'all as well, offline as well. So yeah, I wanted to have around 10 minutes, 15 minutes to kind of answer any Q&As, any questions that are out there. Would love to answer them. What is your advice? Okay, this is a good question. What is your advice for not burning out when you have a lot of commitments, especially for high school students? Yes, this is a good question. So I would say a lot, especially just in classes in general, a lot of people take specific AP classes, such as those AP history classes, just for the AP credits, right? And I mean, that's fine, but I mean, are you really spending your time wisely if you're genuinely not interested in the class and just taking it for AP credits? If you think about it, a lot of people are doing the same. It doesn't really set you apart in terms of college applications. A 0.2 GPA difference is not going to be the difference between you getting into a college and you not getting into college, especially when you have so many other things that you're so passionate about that set you different from other applicants if you're looking at it from a college perspective, right? And I would say the main reason why people burn out is because they're just unable to say no to things. And it's so important for you to say no to something. For instance, like, can I do this? Can I do this? You can't be juggling 50 volunteering service clubs at once. You have to prioritize what's important and what's giving you the largest return on investment, right? So you can participate in maybe, 5 volunteering clubs or 6 or 7. Okay, that's going really reaching out there. And you see maybe at the end of 2 or 3 weeks, you do a little reevaluation, do a little reflection, be like, okay, which one am I genuinely enjoying the most? Put that at the very top, prioritize that one. Which one am I getting the most return on investment for? Such as, which one am I getting the most volunteering hours for? Put that on top. Prioritize the things that matter to you. And you will learn that saying no can be hard at times, but it becomes easier once you learn what you want to get out of that experience, right? Most people are feeling burnt out because they have the need to do everything all at once. They're not even sure. They get so flustered, they get so confused, and then they end up getting stressed, depressed, right? Because they're just lost. They're doing so many things at once and they're just lost, right? And so that's not the same thing as exploring different passions. As I mentioned earlier, you're not doing 50 things at once. You're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then stop, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, right? You want to make sure that you're spending your time accumulating your time wisely so then you don't feel burnt out. And especially going back to the point where I mentioned about classes, right? You want to take the classes. I've seen in my school as well, like I go to really like academically rigorous school and everyone's taking, really, really hard classes that I'm like, okay, I mean, this is great. I mean, as long as you enjoy doing it, but then you're taking like AP World or like, those AP history class and they have no interest for us, you're just doing it for the AP credit. And I'm like, okay, that's you do you, but that's not a good idea. Okay, I hope that answered your question, Arushi. Let me know if you have like follow-up questions. As a fellow woman, a person of color, have you dealt with sexism, racism, history? Yes. So definitely, I would say it is very, very prevalent even now. And I would say I have definitely dealt early on, especially in high school. I have dealt with that, when I was the only female. Well, there's another female officer, but I was the only female officer really heavily involved with the students themselves. There'll be some instances where students would be like, maybe they would ask the other officers instead of me because they feel like, they're more capable just because they're male. So that's just one example of sexism in the STEM industry. And honestly, how you deal with it, it kind of just depends on the situation itself. But I'll give you an example of how I dealt with the situation, right? I had to take that student aside and be like, dude, you know what? Like, I think it's really ignorant for you to be not only treating me like this, but it's very ignorant for you to act as if, this, like the other male officers have a much more value than me, because let's be real here, right? I hustled for this opportunity much more than they did, right? Because I'm a female, and there's some officers, maybe the future officers or you're above, where, they've always recruited male officers, and they're like, I need more out of this person, right? So let's be real, right? Especially if you're a woman or a minority, you're going to have to hustle more for the opportunity. And that's just like the unfortunate fact of this. But once we start, implementing women empowerment, etc., that will slowly decline. And so how I dealt with it is honestly just sometimes what I would do is not only just talk, maybe if I didn't want to point that person out specifically, but I would have a sort of meeting with everybody, with all students, be like, hey, I've seen a lot of instances where y'all are only, just be straightforward. You don't gotta like hint towards them, just be blunt, just be straightforward, right? Like, I don't got the time to be hinting towards something, let's just use our time wisely. So I'll be like, hey, I've seen that multiple times that you guys have been reaching out to him instead of me. Like, let's be more inclusive of everyone, and any question that you can ask everyone, ask anyone who is around, who's available, right? There's no need for you to be reaching out to that person when you can reach out to me. And that usually sets them straight. They're also freshmen, so they're pretty immature, but anyways, that's just one example. There's a lot of other instances where you could do it. Honestly, just having a leadership position gives you that authority, which is really nice, gives you that authority to use your voice, but you can use your voice generically in any situation, whatever position you're holding, student leadership, use your voice. And another thing that I really leveraged when I was doing my interviews was saying, as a fellow woman in STEM, I've noticed that in the past years, there has been a significant decline or significantly less amount of women in this field in comparison to other STEM clubs or just in general. And I would feel like as a woman in STEM, my presence and the ideas that I have to empower more women will bring more women to this field. And hopefully my end goal is bridging that that gender gap. And so that usually is a great kind of response to a question that they have, like, what is your kind of future goals? What do you hope to do in this position, right? And that sets you apart from the other male candidates, right? Because they don't really have that power like you do. So you just want to have that, kind of shift the power on kind of your side. And a way to do that is having a leadership position, right? Even if you are a little bit like introverted, shy, just think of it like, if I was a student, if I was a student and I saw a female representative, would I be more inclined to join that field? Yes, you would. Let's be real, right? So yeah. Okay. Yeah, it seems like you're a huge advocate for women STEM and a lot of your online. Have you been able to sell to a lot? Yes. So I have been able, let me just read the question. Have you been able to sell to a lot of other women in STEM through Unicorn Lock, or have gone lots of other women in STEM download your applications through Blue Wings? Yes. So that's a great point that you bring up. And I totally forgot to mention that, but you're also able to leverage, don't think and a lot of people think this, unfortunately, but don't think that being a woman brings you down in any sort of way. If anything, it gives you the power. You're able to utilize that because there's just so many women in STEM clubs, communities, organizations that you can be a part of. And that just makes me so happy, honestly. And so, yes, I have been able to sell my Unicorn Locks and have gone other fellow women in STEM, or even just women in general, to download my application to Blue Wings Technologies LLC. So what I did through that is I actually reached out to big women in STEM organizations such as If Then She Can. That's a really popular organization. They have like women in STEM ambassadors, people working in NASA. There's a really diverse, people who work in CAD, 3D printing. And I also reached out to the CEO of Reinvented Magazine, which is a woman. And basically, I reached out to her. I was like, hey, are you able to connect with some people? She was able to connect me with some people in her field, and I was able to get them to kind of promote my Unicorn Lock and kind of say like, promote, especially as a young woman in STEM, people are more inclined to help you in that sort of way. So yes, I was able to, honestly, just cold emailing sometimes works, but what usually works the most is reaching out to them through connections and leveraging the fact that you are not only a young person, not only a high school student, already juggling so many things. That shows, how well you manage your time, but you're also a woman in STEM. So they're able to kind of garner the feedback that you are hardworking, persistent, and you also manage your time well, right? So I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Any other questions? I'd love to answer any other thing. And, feel free to connect with me. But yeah.
Actually, a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So you mentioned the importance of both successes and also failures. Can you tell us about one of your failures and how you improved from that, or give a story like that?
Yeah, for sure. I would say one huge setback when I was registering for my LLC company was actually registering for my LLC company, right? So what happened was when I created my app and I put it on the App Store, I put it on Testflight, which is a beta testing app for Apple, where I'm able to just test it, have other people. I just send a private link to other people, and that was fine, right? That worked fine. But then when I actually pushed it onto the App Store on Apple, they were like, hey, this has blackjack, it has cards, it has chips. You can't do this. You need to be registered as an organization. I was like, what the heck? They didn't even tell me about this. It was just a new law or something that just passed after doing some research. And I was really annoyed about that. So what happened was I was like, oh my God, no, I have to create a whole LLC. I just wanted this app to be on the App Store, not to do this whole bunch of other stuff. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So what I did is I had to create, I had to call Apple customer service a billion times. I had to talk to the Secretary of State to register my LLC because I'm younger than 18, right? So there's a little bit of complications with that when registering an organization with the California Secretary of State. But there's a lot of minuscule problems in that sort of whole problem itself. So that was definitely really tough, but I eventually got to finally register my LLC and finally be able to push my app on the App Store. And that took maybe about a month because I was just back to back emailing other people hey, I did this, what's next? Meeting with 5, 6 supervisors, talking to them before school to get all this stuff sorted out because they were only available 8, 9 a.m. I was like, okay, I have to call them before school, which is crazy. But yeah, that was definitely a huge problem. I wouldn't be able to push my app on the App Store had that I not fixed or that problem early on. And my solution to me being younger than 18, I just had my dad put it was just technically under his name, but I had access to all the documents. So it was just sort of hacky way of doing things. I was like, no, this is the easiest way to do it, so I'm gonna just do it. But yeah, that's just one thing that comes to my mind. Very traumatic experience, but the end was worth it.
All right, nice to hear about that. And also there's another question in chat if you want to read that.
Yeah, I just sent it. It's just my first and my last name .com. Yeah, hopefully that works. But yeah, any other questions, guys? I'd love to answer.
I guess if no one has any questions right now, I can ask another one. So you mentioned before how it's super important to oh wait, he said he couldn't exit, but you said before how it's important to try lots of different things before you find things that you're interested in. Do you think there's a specific time where you should start this process, or do you think it's dependent on the person? What's your opinion on that?
I would say okay, let me just answer this question. I'll send the link to the presentation later on. Okay. Yeah, so I would say again, there's no timeline, but I would say try to get started on it as early as possible because people start doing that either really late into their high school career or sometime, when they're in college. So when you start early on, you're able to narrow down the things that you really genuinely enjoy doing, and you're able to focus on that. Thus, you're able to accomplish more in that field and have your sort of niche already ready before a lot of people do, right? And that timeline of exploring that depends on the person, right? It just depends. Some of it is luck, some of it is, how you actually are researching. about that passion, and some of it is how you enjoy that passion, right? If you enjoy something that you feel like you really, really enjoy doing that, like really early on, that's great for you. You know, you're able to further expedite on that passion and then make the most out of that. But some people, you know, take a while, they're unable to find what works for them. And that's why if you're that type of person where it takes a longer time for you to find a passion, if you start early on, you'll end up finding your passion at an earlier stage that you would if you had started much later. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other question? I think we have 1 minute left, so I think, yeah, we should wrap this up.
Yeah, maybe if you have any like last words for any like the women in STEM or aspiring learners here, or people on YouTube who are gonna watch it later, you could say it now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've said or everything I've needed to say, but I would love to add like one small note is that just generally, but you know, specifically tailored to women in STEM, don't let people hold you back. It does become mental at some point where you're going to have to train your brain. You're going to have that mindset where you really should start not giving a crap about what other people think of you, what other people say about you, right? Unless it's like really detrimental, you know what I mean? But of course, other people always have opinions of you that don't agree with your own. Like that's just the beauty of humans, right? People have different opinions than others. You know, that can be good, that can be bad, right? But honestly, just learning that there's just so much energy that you have, and you shouldn't want to put that energy on people who want to bring you down, right? They just do that because they generally have nothing better to do with their lives. But you shouldn't put your energy into that, but instead put your energy into the things that you enjoy doing, that you know will give you a positive, a good high return on investment. And so that's generally, and for women in STEM, you know, just even if you're a bit introverted or you're shy, just try to be more involved with more women in STEM clubs. And even on those mainly male dominated fields, try your best to be involved in those fields, you know, because if you think about it from the perspective of women who are interested in joining that club, joining that whatever, they're able to see that, oh my God, she was able to accomplish what I want to accomplish. I can do it too. And they'll sign up. And so just think about it in that perspective. You know, I would say you're really being selfless if you're doing that for other people. And also not only shows your community involvement, but it also shows how much you wish to help other women in STEM. Because at some point it's not revolved around you now, right? It's now, how are you helping other people get to the same success point that you are in now, right? That's what's most important. So yeah, those would be my final words. And always believe in yourself, always.
All right then.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone, and thanks to Fatimah for putting on an excellent presentation. And that'll be it for this. So yeah, please reach out to her later if you have any questions. And I'll definitely link her website in our announcements too, if you guys want to check her out. So yeah.
Yeah, please just message me on LinkedIn. I'm most active on there. So just connect with me. That's my LinkedIn. Just be like, hey, you know, was at the EcoHacks presentation or watched your video on YouTube. I'd love to reach out, and I'm happy to talk more.
All right. Thank you guys. The meeting will end here, I guess. And yeah, have fun with the rest of the event. See you.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.